Hello and welcome back to the Movie Soup channel. Today we are going to continue our space/sci-fi/horror movie review streak and take a look at the movie Pandorum from 2009, yet another film by Paul William Scott Anderson. I think this is a fine sci-fi representative, which unfortunately has some flaws here and there, but in general, if you are into the genre and up for some thrills, you will enjoy it. As per usual, I will start with a brief spoiler-free summary before diving into the juicy spoiler-ridden details. This movie has a toned-down Dead Space atmosphere. It heavily leans into psychological thriller and has some mild horror and gore moments in a few places. Just like the other Paul Anderson movie, Event Horizon, that we looked into recently, this picture has decent visual part and some seeds of good plot, but fails miserably when it comes to continuity, commitment, and the actual logic. The picture of this movie is much less vivid than the one of the Event Horizon. The overall visual quality is out there, but there are no memorable moments except for maybe two visuals, which I will cover in the spoiler part of this review. I recommend watching Pandorum if you would like to experience futuristic spaceship atmosphere filled with psychological exploration of the fatality that is associated with space travel. However, if you're looking for some proper space horror experience and/or a solid meaningful story, I would suggest skipping this one to avoid disappointment. Alright, now on to the spoiler-ridden part we go. So the Elysium, Noah's Ark of this movie. The external ship design is nothing memorable, while the hypersleep pod external design on the contrary is quite well-designed piece. The main window is reminiscent of the Event Horizon main bridge viewport and a little like the helmet of Isaac Clarke from the Dead Space franchise. Actually, speaking of Dead Space, the visual part of this movie seems to be heavily influenced by that game, which came out almost a year prior. I don't think this is a bad influence by any means. Quite the contrary, that is a hell of a reference point, especially visually. But this is just an influence. There seems to be no direct visual copy-pasting, and unfortunately the movie has none of the tension or the story of the video games. Back to the movie. The wake up, I like that one has to peel their epidermis and cut their nails, adding some realism to the hypersleep idea. But I do not understand why those waking up would also not have long hair, why would they not have every single muscle pierced by a needle for continuous muscle stimulation, and how would this system deal with waste disposal if all sleepers are wearing tidy whities? If you decide to go very realistic with an idea like hypersleep, you should go all the way, make it actually interesting. Anyways, skin peeling is still better than the simple wake-up, like in a Prometheus movie, for example. Bauer, our protagonist, has difficulties recalling who he is and what is his purpose on this ship as a result of a long hypersleep. This is a great idea as well, but it begs a question. Why would you not design the awakening process for your crew members especially in such a way so they would have means to start with their work right away? Some pre-recorded brief materials, custom for each crew member for example, and we also can see later in the movie that the recall timeline is far from short or consistent. Nadia, for example, has been awake for quite a while, yet still having no clear recollection of her past. After a little while, and seems like due to a surge, another crew member gets awoken, Lieutenant Peyton, or so we're led to believe. I think the movie does pretty good job showing the personality split. Gallo at first wakes up frightened and speechless, then quickly gains voice and starts his narrative, proceeds to dominate Peyton, making him think he won, and when the moment is right, take over. So they use dynamo machines to power certain stations, locks, and even handheld weapons. I love this idea, but I do not understand why, once again, the authors did not go further with this. Why would there not be means to power individual doors this way? It seems that those dynamos were devised to either not waste reactors' power or keep certain systems operational in case of a power outage. So why would you not at least make it possible impossible for your flight crews to get to the bridge no matter the power state. Or even better, why not having your flight crews located in separate parts of the ship with autonomous flight controls in case of depressurization, physical damages to the ship, or even human factor? After all, you know that Pandorum is a thing, a very dangerous one, and you seem to have no means of keeping it at bay. So when Bauer falls head first while in the cable seating duct, I think that is a great touch. I recall reading about cave explorers using some tricks to differentiate the actual up and down. This is a little scene, but I liked it a lot. So he eventually gets out and stumbles upon a hanging body. Was that corpse hung by Nadia? Was she hunting the mutants? Why did she attack Bauer and try to steal his stuff? Anyway, the mutants are common, some spiked blue-skinned human-like monsters using spears with plasma cutters for tips. Very nice pictures. They also remind me of the Mad Max and Doomsday Anarchy tribes and warboys respectively. They probably are results of the tribe wars and anarchy that took place on the ship while it was laying on the ocean floor for over 900 years. So Bauer almost gets killed because his communicator's audio comes through, and if not for the Cooper's corpse and the locker, the movie would have ended right here and there. So after that, he decides to venture out further into the ship, and he continues to use his communicator on a loudspeaker and use his flashlight. I mean, what the actual You almost got killed by some weird monster things who found you because you were making noise, and now you think it is a good idea to continue your chat with the LT while walking down the corridor? And how come the mutants did not hear you again? Yes, they snatched the Cooper's corpse, but there are so many of them and the ship is so quiet otherwise that the chances of you continuing to be unnoticed are slim to none. Anyway, the two continue their chat and recall there's supposed to be over 16,000 passengers aboard this ship as a cargo destined to populate the new planet, and that it is a one-way mission, kind of a setup to the Pandorum thing, if you will. Bauer also proceeds to recall that he has a wife, which is presented as a motivator for him to move on and face the horrors. But I have a problem with this. We later find out that his wife abandoned him and that caused Bauer to join this mission. Begs a question around the organizational aspect of this endeavor. If he has nothing to lose and he is an essential part of your crew, are you not compromising your own chances for success? Why not instead having his wife die of something caused either by the overpopulation or the rapidly decreasing living conditions on Earth, which would give him, Bauer, the drive to help saving the humanity in her name by joining this mission. Back to the movie. Bauer finds a fancy bracer weapon, feeds Darnell to the mutants, and gets saved by Mung. Let's call him the Good Samaritan. At the same time, Peyton's story starts to develop and Gallo starts to rear his ugly head. The part of the movie I find most enjoyable and quite nice. Bauer and the Good Samaritan come across Nadia once again, and the three of them fight. I quite frankly do not understand why. Why the survivors act as loners? Why do they try to kill each other? Why do they not unite against the mutants? They don't have to, of course, but it would have been nice for the movie to provide a little more backstory, I guess. So Nadia decides to help them out and take them to her lair. She seems to have a nice comfy setup out there and even grows her own food, the crickets. So why does she have to go out and risk getting killed by the mutants? If the bioarchive has autonomous power preserving the samples, why would the flight control not have the same redundancy? As we see at the end of the movie, the system evacuated all lifeboats when the bridge gets flooded. Why would the nav system not do the same right after their arrival? Actually, that takes me to the idea of a short version of this movie. This entire story would take no more than 5 minutes to show probably. Let's give it a shot. The ship flies out, the crew goes mad, the power goes bad, and the ship crashes during the landing, or lands because of a crash. The nav system reserve power kicks in, figures out they arrived, and evacuates all the cargo. They live happily ever after on the new planet. The end. Anyway, back to the movie as it is. Bauer and co proceed in the main hypersleep pod area and come across one mutant, which three of them barely manage to take out. The fight scene is not bad, I think, but they get noticed by the mutant leader, which causes massive chase. I kinda like how the leader looks, and he seems to have some more to him than just pure hunger for food. He seems to have some thoughts and emotions. I wish the movie explored that aspect a bit more, but alas, that's all we get. Trying to escape their evolved pursuers, Bauer and co get into another trap set up by a mad fellow who tries to eat them. I enjoyed the madman's story and how it was told in parallel with Gallo's monologue, and how one of them deliberately omitted certain facts and details, a very good touch. I also was really angry with how carelessly the movie treated Nadia's suggestion that the mutants were the result of actual humans adapting to the conditions of the ship. Thanks to the accelerator drug all sleepers are pumped with, designed to help humans adjust to the new planet faster. Some sort of an evolution accelerator, if you will. A pure sci-fi, and I love it, but why did they not direct more attention to that idea? This seems to be a major plot item, but instead it gets only briefly mentioned and quickly forgotten. Outside of that, the Madman encounter also deteriorated the already crumbling plot structure of this movie by having Bauer figure out that the reactor had less than an hour before the quote-unquote end. This essentially made the entire story so much more opportunistic and improbable. Why not instead ramping up the tension by, let's say, immense pressure from the mutants or maybe some physical breakdown of the ship? It has been laying in the water for hundreds of years after crashing into the new planet, so that would make some sense. It could also explain the sudden awakening of Bauer as having been triggered by some safety system, for example. Quick encounter with the mutant kid is cool and makes me wonder what else we could have seen if only the movie was brave enough to develop that aspect of it further. Jumping back to Gallo and Peyton's interactions, as I've said before, the interactions and depiction of the bipolar disorder are pretty good, very realistic and persuasive. I also enjoyed how that arc developed. First, only Gallo's guilt-born self woke up and briefly existed in the blessed ignorance. But as the effects of hypersleep wore off, the other, you could say the original one, Gallo, reared his ugly head, at first barely understanding his surroundings and having no actual control, but very quickly regaining his bearings and take over the fake Gallo, if you will. This is like a little short psychological thriller within the main movie, very nice. Back to Bauer and co. So they get to the reactor chamber and it turns out that the mutants nest on its floor. No extensive explanation as to why, no signs also led to this revelation either, and it seems like they simply pile up and chill as one big happy family on the floor. I mean, we saw earlier that they have some sort of leadership and organization, however primitive, but we also know that there are survivors like Nadia and the Good Samaritans, so why would the mutants not have some traces of their dislocation around the reactor core? Some defenses, some trash maybe, bones, whatever basically. Also, earlier in the movie, Bauer stated several times that he needed to reconfigure the reactor, making it sound like a super complicated task only he could perform, but when he finally gets to it, all it is was a tattoo code scan and a flip of a switch. I mean, what the I mean, literally anybody could have done it. And when they do restart or purge the reactor, we see a huge energy blast that wipes out quite a few mutants on the floor, while Bauer and Nadia seem to be absolutely unaffected, just a few meters away from the total annihilation. Fast forward to Gallo, Bauer and Nadia on the bridge. When they open their shutters and discover there are no stars, Bauer kind of accepts their loss and goes off the rails hallucinating and stuff. Why? I mean, he has been super determined and driven so far throughout the movie, getting his second wind from Nadia, who certainly is the main driving force for him now. They also had a massive chase like a minute ago, so he should be super high on adrenaline, and if anything, he gotta be super aggressive with Gallo. and making some dangerous rash decisions, maybe even panicking, resulting in the glass damage and bridge flooding. Nothing exceptional with how the movie ends, both Power and Nadia survive, the new world looks lovely, and they saved like a 1,000-something people. So to sum things up, this movie is not too bad, visuals are decent, even by today's standards, and the interactions between Gallo and Peyton are enjoyable as well. Grabbing a glass of whiskey and watching this picture will render you a couple of decently entertaining hours. I just can't stop and wonder what if and why. Well, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, a goodbye.